It was when I began a story hour after lunch that my passion quickly became the children's. We read books like Where the Wild Things Are. Monsters screeched on the blackboard. We saved a space in the corner for a web for Charlotte. Wilbur's pen was a nearby locker. Every book came to life, and the children would gaze eager and wide-eyed, leaning forward as I turned each page. I wanted these children to dream of possibilities beyond their web of city blocks and brick school walls.
Every year, we honor an individual that has made a significant contribution to the American experience, to understanding what our citizenship is, to sometimes history or civic learning. Well, this year, we're pleased to honor Laura Bush for all of her work over the years as kind of the nation's teacher and librarian.
You need to be literate. You need to read. And her work throughout her entire career of encouraging and promoting reading is the basis upon which any kind of learning takes place.
The thing I remember about Laura is that you always felt her presence without her having to do anything. She just had a sort of gracious, informal manner.
One of the best ways to describe Laura Bush is something she said herself. She was asked by a journalist, so who are you going to be? More like Hillary Clinton or Barbara Bush? And her response was perfect. She said, I know Laura Bush pretty well, so I think I'm going to be her.
I loved my students. I was just 21 when I entered that fourth grade classroom, and my students in so many ways taught me. I had to keep their attention by myself, alone.
One of the most important things, of course, to remember about Laura Bush is that her passion for education and literacy and libraries just really formed the core and foundation of all of her work.
A lot of things that Laura Bush did, people know about because they have lasting impact. One would be the book festival.
The Texas Book Festival was a seed planted by a Texas author by the name of Bob Skimmin, and he thought she is the perfect person to get this started and get it off the ground, and she loved the idea. And in 1996, the first book festival occurred. It was a huge success, and it still is to this day. They've given almost $3 million to Texas libraries for their collections.
This is Book TV's live coverage of the National Book Festival, the first ever, hosted jointly by the Library of Congress and First Lady Laura Bush.
She wanted to do it again when she came to Washington. First year, she asked us to reach out to the Library of Congress. They were very interested. We put together the festival using the same format at the Capitol. 35,000 people came the first year.
And she picked the books. She even picked a book written by a Mexican author about the Alamo, which was a bold thing to do, but it all seemed natural, and these people gave wonderful talks, and it was a new event for Washington.
There's a reason why Jim Billington calls Laura Bush the librarian-in-chief. I mean, she really set that stage, another wonderful example for the nation, and it's still continuing. And talk about a First Lady's legacy, that is certainly one.
I think there's something that book lovers all share. And no matter what our political views might be or what our differences might be of any kind, we all love books, we all love reading, but especially children. We have a really wonderful, huge body of children's literature in the United States, and as an old retired children's librarian, I'm really proud of that. Thank you. I began my education initiatives in earnest. I made school visits and started planning an early childhood cognitive development conference. My other chief focus was teacher recruitment. I began by working with 2 programs, Teach for America and Troops to Teachers. I was now doing what I loved, finding my place in the world of Washington and beyond.
One of the great memories and experiences I have of working on Mrs. Bush's staff that was really important to civic literacy and civic participation was the big read, taking some of classic works in American literature and then taking the love of those books to communities all over the country, where small communities would adopt a book and read it together.
She knew how important it was for children to enter school ready to read, ready to learn. And so the Early Childhood Initiative was basically to let parents know how important it was for them to read to their children early and often, because children who enter school with a rich vocabulary have a heads-up chance in the education process.
Another thing that she did was Preserve America, and this was an initiative that was about heritage sites and history and culture and providing some grants to local communities to be able to preserve that.
After, certain events that happened in our country that were action-forcing events like 9/11 and Katrina, Laura Bush knew that the structure for children of going to school would be really important for their healing.
I visited with those who had lost their homes, and I came back as communities were rebuilt, as they opened schools or cut ribbons on playgrounds. But I wanted to do more. In 2001, I had started the Laura Bush Foundation for America's Libraries. We have given nearly $6 million to rebuild the library collections of these devastated schools.
The United Nations named her an honorary ambassador to the Decade of Literacy.
She was moved by the president's second inaugural address, where he talks about the responsibility of us to help others who want to be free to achieve that. Her work that she did in Afghanistan was remarkable.
The poverty, poor health, and illiteracy that the terrorists have imposed on women in Afghanistan is a matter of deliberate human cruelty carried out by those who seek to intimidate and control. And they must be stopped. The fight against terrorism is also a fight for the rights and dignity of women.
When her voice was the first voice that Americans really heard about the condition for women in Afghanistan and the fact that they were denied an education and an opportunity to go to school, she felt compelled to raise that as an issue, that it was important not only for Afghans, but for Americans.
This is where Mrs. Bush's initiatives in Afghanistan for the women's teacher training program were so important, because young girls weren't able to go to school and have a male teacher. And that allowed women to go into villages and teach both boys and girls.
The work that she's accomplished through the Bush Institute in working in this country and around the world to help, especially women, learn how to participate in their governments is a good example of this civic literacy message carried across the globe.
When you work for a First Lady, you really have the benefit of seeing just how much they have an impact on issues that need attention in addition to things that they care about. And shining a light on that really was something that inspired me.
The foundation that Laura Bush and that Barbara Bush created will have a lasting impact because they are sustainable, supported by a wide constituency, and they are measurable. And when you can measure success and prove that you can have an impact, that's what will make it last.
I was tremendously impressed by the words of Mrs. Bush. She spoke on this very topic, and she said, "We must prepare our children and grandchildren with the tools they need to be informed,
engaged citizens who care about individual liberty and democracy. We must teach them history. We must insist they understand the government they're blessed to live under. We must teach our children how to listen, to show empathy, to show civility in the face of disagreement, and to overcome malice and hate. And we must model that behavior ourselves. This is the task of parents, teachers, and anyone who touches the lives of young people today. And it's our patriotic duty as Americans."